And as I was writing this passage, this sermon, I was thinking back to my days in seminary, which seemed further and further away as I get a little bit older each day. And I'm reminded of one of my professors, one of my favorite professors was Dr. David Lanier. And he's retired now, but he was one of these good old Southern gentlemen, if you know what I'm talking about, had that deep belly voice, and he always had the gray beard, salt and pepper beard, and the mustache, and he loved the Civil War. He would go to all the reenactments, and he loved to camp out there in the field with the guys and be a part of all that, and teach at the seminary and everything. So anyway, he was one of my favorite teachers, and he was incredibly smart, and he would tell us oftentimes in class that he liked to go to Target and just sit outside of Target, and he would just talk to people as they come by. And he was someone that was good to have a conversation with. He could strike up a conversation with anybody. So anyway, he would stand outside of Target, and when people would be willing to talk with him, he'd point up to that great big red Target sign. You know what I'm talking about, that big one you just can't miss. And he would say something like this. He would say, life is kind of like that Target sign. We're all trying to hit it. We're all trying to hit the bullseye, but the problem is that we can't. Only Jesus can do that for us. And so if that opened the door for people to talk, he would talk further with them. But honestly, he was right. Life is like that Target bullseye, isn't it? And we all know why, because we can't hit it no matter how hard we try, because we just aren't good enough. But the thing that I want to ask today is, it's not so much focusing on that. The thing I want to think about today is, are we even thinking in those terms today? What I mean by that is, are we even concerned with all that importance that's involved with that? Or are we so wrapped up in the little things that are going on around us and just the other things that's going on around us, little or not, in our lives, in the media, or whatever, that we end up missing what matters the most? And that's what I'm going to talk about today, is what matters the most. You see, earlier this week, as I was thinking about what to preach on this Sunday and was praying about it, God led me to preach on Matthew 24. And Matthew 24 is a pretty controversial chapter in Scripture, because a lot of people like to look at that and they try to draw things out of it that chapter of Scripture is never intended to do in the first place. For instance, many have tried to look at Matthew 24 and pinpoint when things are going to happen. Some that looked at Matthew 24, they tried to determine exactly when Jesus would come back. And guess what? They failed, although they keep trying. Many times people, and smart people, will look at this and they'll try to say, well, does this chapter promote a premillennial view of the rapture, or maybe a postmillennial or all-millennial view? And then does it say when Jesus is going to come back and set up his millennial kingdom on earth? You see, that's a whole lot to talk about, isn't it? And I promise you I'm not going to talk about any of that today, because that's a lot and I don't have time for it. But my point is this. In scriptures like these that we see in Matthew 24, and then in other moments of our lives, with all that's going on, if we're not careful with what we do, and especially in these verses, we will miss what this is talking about. We will miss what this text is telling us today. So if you would please stand with me as we look at Matthew 24, 1 through 14, and let's see what Jesus says here to his disciples. He says in verse 1, or the Bible says in verse 1, Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the building of the temple, the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, you see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered them, see that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another, and many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. You may be seated now. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, thank you that we have your sure word here, Lord, your Bible to look at and rest on knowing that it is foundational, that it won't change, Lord, that we can be at peace when we look at these things because you have told us what's going to happen in the future, and the Bible has told us what's happened in the past, and it's all consistent with what you have said. Your promises are true, Father. Thank you for that. And in the midst of these times we live in now, Father, may we look at this passage of Scripture today and be reminded of what matters most. I pray today, Father, help me to just to speak your words and only your words and not mine, Lord. I don't want to get in the way. If I do, I'll trip all over myself. I just want to be faithful to you. Help me to do that, Father. And I pray today, Lord, just help open our eyes, Lord, to see, our ears to hear, our minds to understand what your word is telling us today, Lord, but most importantly, open our hearts and help us to apply it to our lives today. Help us to please you and honor you, for you are worthy of all of our praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So from this passage of Scripture today, I have 2 points for those who like to take notes. So if you're taking notes, these 2 points are this. Number 1, the knower of all things and the peace that provides. And then number 2, the knowledge of what is to come and what we should do with it then. So number 1 is, again, the knower of all things and the peace that provides. And then number 2, the knowledge of what is to come and what we should do with it. So as we consider these points today, I want to start off with this thought. And the thought is this, when I was little growing up and I used to have to go to the doctor, my fear was this: Mom, what are they going to do to me at the doctor's? And if you've ever had children, you know what I'm talking about, right? Those kids want to know, what are they going to do with me when I get to the doctor? So, in other words, you know what the translation of that is? Am I going to get a shot? Right? Kids don't like shots. Shots hurt. Do you remember that feeling when you were growing up yourself? What it was like to have that fear of going to the doctor. And you see, we wanted to know the answers of what was going to happen then. We wanted to know what they were going to do. Well, you see, my son Ethan does the same thing. He will drive us crazy with questions about what are they going to do to him. He'll ask stuff like this: well, what are they going to do? Or am I going to get a shot? And then he finds out that the potential is there for a shot. His next question is this: is it going to hurt? You know what I'm talking about. Is it going to hurt? And you see, that's just part of our human nature. We want to know what is going to happen to us. What is going to happen to our country, maybe our community that we live in. We want to know what's going to happen to that, what affects us. And those questions are relevant, but the thing is that they can be endless. And that's what we see in the first part of our scripture text for today. In verse 1, our Bible say that Jesus was leaving the temple, and his disciples, they came to show him the buildings of the temple. So I want you to understand that they didn't just come by and say, oh, hey, Jesus, there's that building over there, and there's that building over there. No, they were coming by and they were bragging to him about it. Because you see, the temple before was Solomon's temple, and it was beautiful. It was magnificent. It was one of the greatest structures in the world, and it had been destroyed by the Babylonians. And so when Israel was released from their captivity in Babylon, and they came back, they were allowed to rebuild the temple, and they did. And it just wasn't quite as good, but it was still beautiful. So the disciples here, they're coming up to Jesus, and it's like they're saying this: understand, these are good old country boys. You know what I'm saying? These are good old country boys, and they're saying, see, Jesus, we're doing it pretty good, aren't we? We got this great building over here. We're worshiping you pretty well. So you get to see him so far. And then Jesus does what he does well in so many cases. He drops a bomb on them in verse 2. Now you understand what I say when you get the bomb dropped on you. Sometimes you might go to work one day and find out that you no longer have a job. That's getting the bomb dropped on you, right? Or sometimes you may go to the doctor, and after you have those moments of, hey doc, how you doing today? He goes, I'm doing well. How are you doing? He says, well, I'm doing pretty good. Then he says, well, I've got some bad news for you. Guess what? He's about to drop a bomb on you. So you understand what I'm saying, what I mean by that? In verse 2, Jesus says this: you see all these buildings, don't you? Truly I say to you that there will not be left here one stone upon another that's not going to be thrown down. This place that you were so enraptured with, and they were, is going to be destroyed. Now talk about letting the air out of your balloon, right? You might as well just go ahead and tell that little child of yours that's asking, Mommy, am I going to go to the doctor? You might as well just say, yes, you're going to the doctor, and son, you're going to get a shot, and it's going to hurt. Right? That's letting the air out of your balloon. You see, that's what Jesus is doing here. And what that creates is questions. Because your child will be asking questions then, certainly. Why do I go to the doctor? Well, the disciples in verse 3, that's exactly what they do. Verse 3 says that as Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, that the disciples came to him privately, not with a crowd around him. They came privately, and they began to ask this, and I'm going to paraphrase it. What are the signs of the end of the time? Honestly, you can't get away from that anymore, can you? You go on Facebook, you go on any form of media, you go on the news or even books, you see books and all kinds of stuff out there that has this statement. These are signs of the end of the time. And honestly, I would agree, but I'm going to have to add something to that. And the reason I have to add something to that is because I get a little frustrated when I hear it. Can you imagine why I would get frustrated when I hear that? Because here's the truth. Ever since Jesus went back, a long time ago, we've been in the end of time. We've been in the end times ever since Jesus ascended back to heaven. And you see, all these things that we have seen since then have been signs that point to the fact that the world is coming to an end, and that one day Jesus is going to come back and he's going to make things right. That's what I'm looking forward to, and I hope that you do as well. But I think that we miss the fact that even in the apostles' day, and understand this, these disciples became the apostles of Jesus, and even in their day, they were thinking that Jesus was going to come back. But they also gave this warning. You still need to be ready if he doesn't. You see, they wanted them to be ready in case he came back then, but they also said be ready if he doesn't, because, you see, Jesus' death occurred nearly 2,000 years ago. I did the math the other day. According to as close as historians can get it, he died 1,990 years ago. So what's the point of that? Well, the point is this, is that we may have to wait a while, right? The world has had to wait 1,990 years so far. So we may have to wait a little bit longer. So what is this text telling us then? Well, we have to understand it to see what Jesus is talking about. And he talks about two prophecies here. The first one is the destruction of Jerusalem. The second one is his return. Well, the destruction of Jerusalem was something that was going to happen. Jesus began to tell his disciples in verses 4 through 14 about all the true and the false signs that the temple was about to be destroyed. And then in verse 15, he mentions something called the abomination of desolation. And some who are really a lot smarter than I am think that points to this man named Antiochus Epiphanes, who was a pagan ruler at that time. And he came and attacked Jerusalem, and he went in to the temple, he built an altar, and then he sacrificed a pig on it. Now, does anyone have any idea of how that would be offensive to a Jew? Because pigs are unclean. So he talked about, he basically smacked them in the face and said, your God is a puny God because I can do this. You see, here's the thing. This happened in 168 BC. And if you know what BC stands for, that means before Christ. So Jesus, when he's prophesying here about the desolation of the temple that's coming, he seems to be talking about something that's going to occur in the future. And there again, if you follow history, in AD 70, 40 years after Jesus gave this prophecy, the Romans surrounded Jerusalem and they destroyed it, and the temple with it. If you follow history in any way, Josephus, he was a Jewish historian. He was a Jewish slave to the Romans. He was able to get his freedom. He stayed with the Romans, and he documented the history of the Jews during the time of Jesus. And amazingly, guess what? It all lines up with what the Bible says anyway, so that's a good thing. But Josephus, he gives a description of the savagery, of the slaughter, of the disease and the famine that occurred at this time. He says that parents were so hungry that they resorted to eat their own children. Can you imagine? The Bible speaks to that, doesn't it? And then he says that the death toll was somewhere in the millions. Now, we've heard of that battle before, having wars and such, and they talk about death toll in the thousands. He says it's in the millions. And he's accurate what he has said. Can you imagine that? And then the reason that no stone was left upon another, as Jesus prophesied, was that when the Romans came in and they burned the temple, what did the temple have a lot of in it? Gold on the walls, gold all over the place. And what does gold do when it gets hot? It melts. So all that nice liquid gold is running down the walls, and it goes where liquid likes to go, which is everywhere. Those cracks, those crevices, everything else. And so when everything cooled down and Roman soldiers came in to loot the place, guess what they did? They tore it all apart to get that gold. And that's why Jesus said, no stone will be left with one another. That was the first prophecy. But what was the second? Well, Jesus says, I'm going to come back. That's what the second half of this chapter is talking about. And I won't go into depth with that, but if you look at verses 29 to 31 with me, Jesus says this, or the Bible says this about what Jesus says. He says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give us light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Does that say anything to do with the destruction of the temple? Nothing at all, does it? Jesus says he's coming back, and when he does, it's going to be something that no one will miss. Because it's going to be with splendor, it's going to be glorious, and it's going to be with a trumpet call from heaven. And you see, that's a lot of information to deal with there. And I'm glad that you guys stayed with me through that, because I just wanted to do that to kind of set the context of what Jesus is saying here. But what is the point then? Why does Jesus say all these things to his disciples? Why is this presented to us today? The answer is this, because it brings two realities to our attention. The first one is this, that the things of this world are passing. And we see that every day, don't we? You get up in the mirror, and you look in the mirror, and what do you see? You see that little gray hair that wasn't there the day before. You might see some crow's feet or some tired eyes, or maybe you see that wrinkle that wasn't there a couple years ago. You know what I'm talking about. You see those things in the mirror that were not there before, and we realize that we're getting older. About a week ago, my mom came to visit with us, and she was so surprised about how much the boys had grown, and I'm sure that when the whole church gathers back together, we're going to look at those kids that we saw what seemed just a few weeks ago, we're going to say, wow, they've grown a lot. I'm talking about Tessa and Tucker and all of them, because they did grow while we were away, and when we see that, we're going to say, man, time passes by, doesn't it? See, nothing hardly ever stays the same, and Jesus even says as much in the Bible. He says this later on, he says that heaven and earth will pass away. And that's a truth that we really don't want to think about sometimes, but it's there and we have to consider it. That all that we try to do here on earth, Jesus says heaven and earth will pass away, that all we try to do here on earth, if it doesn't have any eternal value to it whatsoever, what's going to happen to it? Jesus says it's going to pass away. And then the second reality that we have to contend with is this. This is found in verse 35. Jesus says, although heaven and earth will pass away, remember everything is temporary. The second truth is this. He says, my words will never pass away. So if you're a believer, that's powerful, isn't it? Because that gives us a foundation to build upon. And Jesus is the one that, as I said before, he is the knower of all things. And for those who believe and have placed their faith in him, that should bring them peace, should it not? You see, Jesus is the one who knows all things. He accurately described the temple being destroyed. And it happened as he said it was going to happen. And amongst a host of other things that he said was going to happen. And it still has been happening in this old world of ours. So when he said that he's going to come back, the question then becomes is, do you believe him? And if you believe, you should say yes. But then here's the second question. Will you be ready for that day? Which then leads to our second point. The knowledge of what is to come and what we should do with it then. You see, if we are to be ready for that day, what will we have to do? We're going to have to persevere. Are we going to be able to persevere in our own power? Well, no, we can only persevere in the power of Christ. And you see, when we look at the world today, if you look at the media in any way, if you read the newspaper, if you get on Facebook, if you get on whatever form of media you use, what do you see out there? A lot of fear, don't you? See a lot of chaos, a lot of unrest. You see a lot of bad things. And you can't help but turn on the TV and see that in the morning or wherever you look at. And anymore it seems that what you see is designed to scare you to death. And what I mean by that is you can watch the media, see one news story about one thing, and then I guarantee you later that day there's going to be one that contradicts it. If you see something that's encouraging, there's another story that's going to come later that's going to contradict it, and you say, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, because what am I supposed to believe? And I'm not saying that we should be cautious, because we should. But what I'm saying is that somewhere, somehow, we're going to have to take a step of faith, aren't we? That somehow, somewhere, we're going to have to get back out there in the world. And Jesus points to that in this text. He says, we're going to have to persevere, but how does he do so? Well, he says in verse 36, but concerning that day and hour, talking about his coming back, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. He says no one knows the day or the hour when he's going to come back, but what is going to happen in the meantime, this is what he talks about in this text. That's where we get back to it. He says the four things we're going to face in this world until he comes back, and the first one is deception. Jesus said in verses 4 through 5, see that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. You see, people are going to rise up. And people, when they come, they're going to try to deceive you. That's essentially what Jesus is saying here. There's going to be people who's going to try to lead you astray. He says, be on guard. Because in many instances, it's going to be really easy to believe them. You know, it's true when you think about false teachers or things of that nature, our minds automatically go back to some of the cult leaders from the past, maybe David Koresh and others like that, who led a lot of people astray. And we look back at them and say, man, how do they do so easily? Or we look at some religious leaders who we found out later in life that they were really only in it for the buck. You know what I'm talking about? They were in it to make money. And we say, man, how do so many people really believe in them? Jesus said it was going to happen. We need to be on guard with that stuff. You see, it's real easy to think about those things, but the warning that Jesus gives her goes a little bit deeper, because there's a lot of people out there who have names that are not so great. They're not popular. There are people that are down the road in that building, there are people down the road in that building, there's people that's over in that state who are living in your community. Maybe you work with them and they're just down the hall in another office. And my point is this, is that they have a different picture of Jesus than what our Bible says he is. And when we see them or when we hear them, we are commanded to not believe them. Because in some cases it might be really easy to do so. The second thing we're going to face is tribulation. Life is not going to be easy as a believer, is it? I meet with a group of guys and we talk about some things, and one of the guys said this. He said, man, it is not easy being a Christian. And I said, it's not. But here's the thing, Jesus never promised it was going to be easy, did he? And it's a truth, because Jesus says in this world you will face hard times. Jesus calls them here in verse 8. He says these things that we're going to face are birth pains. And we all know what goes on in the delivery room, don't we? We at least have a general knowledge of that. If you're a husband and you've gone in there with your wife, you know what happens. Sometimes it starts kind of slow, but then what happens? It builds. And it builds, and the pain builds, and the pain builds, and guess what? After a while, it gets kind of almost unbearable. Thank God for painkillers, right? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Birth pains. Jesus says, this is the beginning. He says, what we will experience is like that. And his list includes everything you see in verses 6 through 7. He says, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. You see that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. So there again, we are not reminded of these things to try and pin a date for when Jesus is going to return. We're reminded of them because he says this is the beginning. And in the meantime, while he waits for him to return, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to be prepared for that? Because when we look back at verse 6, despite all of this, which I would say is pretty bad news, right? Wars and rumors of wars and famines and all of that stuff. That's pretty bad stuff, right? What does Jesus tell the disciples to do? Don't be alarmed. You see, one of the truths of Scripture that I forget sometimes, I'm honest with you, I forget it, and I think many do, and the truth is this, is that Christians are not safe from trials. Jesus doesn't save somebody and put them up on the proverbial shelf somewhere and say, you're okay up there until I come back. And when I come back, I'm going to take you down. You're going to miss all this mess down here. He doesn't do that, does he? Because here's the second part of that truth. We are saved through them. 1 Peter 4:12 through 14 says that. He says, beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial that comes upon you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice, insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, and that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted for the name of Christ, Peter says you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. Jesus, in essence, is saying to us throughout the entire Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, he says this: trust me. Even when things seem to be crazy, he says, trust me. And we should, shouldn't we? The third thing we're going to face is temptation. Look at verses 10 through 12 with me. Jesus says, and then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Now let me ask you this. Hatred, strife, offenses, all these crimes against humanity, what do we see out in society today? Hatred, strife, offenses, crimes against humanity. We see a lot of bad things, don't we? We see stuff about this virus. We see all these things that is happening. And Jesus says all these things are going to increase. And many who claim to believe, they're going to fall away because the love of many will grow cold. Now, let me give you an illustration that kind of presents this in a different way. You see, we understand the nature of charcoal. Does anyone like to grill? If you don't raise your hand, I'll just be in your home building. Most people like to grill, right? It's fun. It's good. I know Bill likes to grill. If you use charcoal, what happens with charcoal after it's been on fire for a while? It gets gray. It doesn't want to have that flame to it. But it's hot, isn't it? All right, when you take that charcoal away from the heat, what happens to it, though? Over time, it gets cold. You see, back in Wake Forest, Kimberly and Ethan went out with a friend of hers and had a couple of young kids, and they went to a nearby lake, and her friend had this little one, probably about 8 tall, I think probably 1.5 years old, and he wobbled, because you know what children do when they got those ginormous diapers on, they can't walk straight, they wobble, don't they? So they're he's doing this number when he comes out of the car. He got out of the car and walked over, not from here to that pew, and sat down on the grass, lighting a pile of ashes that someone had just dropped out. No fire on or nothing, and he got a 3rd-degree burn on his leg. About a 1.5-year-old. Can you imagine getting a 3rd-degree burn on his leg? You see, charcoal can retain its heat for a really long time after it's removed from the fire, but what happens over time is that it grows cold. And why does it do that? Well, because it's been removed from the heat. And Jesus says that the love of many, and I believe he's talking about genuine believers here, will grow cold. And why do I think he says that? Because I think he says it because as believers, we're going to see others who they thought were believers. We're going to see people in church who we thought were true believers leave the church, and then we'll be tempted to do the same. And we'll be tempted to not trust in God. Because we'll say, well, who else is? Who else is really giving up their time or maybe their talents or whatever else is serving God? Who else is really praying? Should I pray? But no one else is really doing it. Should I be involved? No one else is really doing it. So I don't really need to do that thing so much, do that, because it's not the popular thing to do anymore. And then finally, Jesus says we're going to face persecution. Now, honestly, I don't think we see a lot of persecution yet. I think it's coming. Fears over this virus, for instance, and whether people should or should not be wearing a mask, that's just signs of some of the things, the early onset of things that we may be facing. Or whether things need to be reopened, or whether they need to stay closed, etc., etc. You see protests in the streets. You see people with a whole lot of finger pointing and name calling going on, and people are being killed all over the place. And we may not be facing a whole lot of persecution now, but it's coming, because Jesus says this in verse 9. He says, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. That hasn't happened yet, but I believe it's going to. Jesus says it's going to happen, so it's going to happen. But why is it going to happen? Well, the simple reason is this, is because we bear his name. If we claim the name of Christ as Christians, if we stand for the truth and uphold the truth that's found in the Word of God, what I mean by that is if you go home and read your Bible and honestly attempt to apply it to your life, and you stand up for what you believe, if you have a faith in Christ, what's going to happen is that people are going to see a difference in you, whether you realize it or not. Because what's going to happen is that as you read and as you obey, you're going to be proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom to the whole world. Did you know that? It's interesting, isn't it? Because as God's Word changes you, it changes you on the inside in, and eventually on the outside. People will see that, and people will notice that difference, and they may not like it. And as you stand up firmly planted in God's Word, and you defend what it says, and people ask you, and think about this, if you do those things and people ask you, why do you do this? What should your answer be? Or at least a general idea what your answer should be. Well, if you read your Bible, you will say, I do this because of what Jesus did for me, right? What he did for me through the gospel. This is why I do what I do. But here's the thing. When was the last time someone honestly asked you that question? Probably never, right? Or very few. We've not really had a lot of people ask us that question. But here's the thing. I believe with what Jesus said that we're going to have that chance maybe very soon. Are you ready? See, here's the thing. All these things that we just talked about are things that are birth pains. Jesus says they're the beginning of things, and they're leading to the end of the world. But that's not necessarily signs that he's right around the corner and coming. Why do I say that? Well, because of what he says in verse 14. He says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. See, this world as we know it will not end until the gospel has been made known everywhere. What he's talking about there is that the world is made up of a lot of people groups. A lot of people have different languages. A lot of people have different cultures. And people have mapped out where those people groups are. And not all of them have the gospel to them yet. Up there at Southeastern, they have a big TV screen that's lit up, and it's powered by the Joshua Project. And anyway, it has a list of all the people groups and all the people where the gospel has been shared. And guess what? The list of where the gospel has not been shared is pretty big. And Jesus says he's not coming back until all this is gone. But it's getting smaller every day. You see, it doesn't mean that people in those groups have to be saved. What it means is that there has to be an evangelical presence among them. There has to be a few people among them who are believers and who are sharing the gospel faithfully. Then they will be listed as being reached. But that's not happening quite yet. That's why the Great Commission is so important. That's why we need to reach out to them. So what do we do in the meantime? As we face this deception, as we face this tribulation, as we face this temptation and persecution, because that's what Jesus is talking about here. What do we do in the meantime? We persevere on. Some may say, well, how do I know when that time comes? And then when Jesus comes back? Well, I promise you're going to know. Because Jesus said, I'm going to make it a broadcast to everything. You're not going to miss it. You ever seen one of those planes fly and it's really loud? I can imagine that trumpet blast would be so loud heard around the world. But that's not the question we need to be concerned with, because the question that we need to be concerned with is, what do I do until then? That's how this message applies to us today, because you see, although we all have questions, and we do, we all have questions, and we want to have answers to those questions, and I believe a lot of those answers we're not going to get until we get to heaven, if God wants to give them to us. I hope he does. The thing is that Jesus clearly shows us here that what we are to be concerned with lies not in the small details of all those questions that we have. Rather, the answers that we should be concerned with can best be summed up in 3 questions. And I think it would do very well for us all to think about these questions today. If you're taking notes, please write them down because they're significant. Because question number 1 says this: are you ready for whatever may happen in your life in the days to come or even next year? If Jesus does not come back, are you ready for what he's going to do in the meantime? Question number 2, are you ready for what is going to happen in the world in the next 10 years if Jesus comes back? You ever think about that? Because if you can answer question number 3, then I think you'll be ready for the first 2. Are you absolutely certain where you will spend your time in eternity? Amen. See, Jesus is not so concerned that we know the answers to all these small details of life. He just wants us to be ready for what's going to come. So the question is, are you? You know, I love Miss Dolores. I talked to her the other day. She is a saint in many ways. So Miss Dolores, I'm going to use her as an example this morning, if that's all right. I talked to her on the phone, and she said, have you seen what's happening on the news? And I hadn't. I didn't know all these protests and stuff was going on. And she told me, and she said this. You remember this, Miss Dolores? She said, those people who are beginning their life together. But Jesus ain't going to be putting up with this for very long. And you know what? I think she's right. But then question by a friend of ours, a friend of mine in Kimberly's, that asked this question. See, they're going through a really difficult time, and they are praying very specifically that God would answer this prayer of theirs by doing something real specific. And so they had asked for our thoughts on this. And so I'm preparing for this sermon, and the only answer I could give is this. It's okay to pray that way, but how are you prepared to live if God doesn't grant that answer? And that's what that text is about today. How are we going to live until Jesus comes back? Because we think He's coming back very soon, and He may very well be, but if He doesn't, how will we live? I think that's a question we all need to ask ourselves today. You would bow for me in prayer. Father, I thank You that we have Your word to look at, Lord, Your sure word of testimony, the gospel, Lord, and we are reminded that about the authority of God's word, that it will last forever, it will never go away. Heaven and earth will pass away, but Your word is not going to go away. And as we consider the things that are in Your word, we understand that we're going to face deception, we're going to face tribulation, we're going to face persecution, we're going to face so many things out there, Father, that are just hard things to deal with. And You've given us warnings of them to come. But then we look for You to come back, and we pray that You do, because we're excited, Father. We want You to come back, and we want things to be made right. But sometimes I'm afraid that we lose sight of the fact that what if we don't for a while here? What are we going to do? I pray, Father, help us to be obedient. Help us to have the attitudes of sacrifice and surrender, and Lord, the attitude of listening to what You're telling us in Your word, and to abide in You, Father. And what that means is to be listening and have those attitudes, but then will help us to be willing to serve, help us to be willing to give, and help us to be willing to be that light around us that the sports are desperately needs. Lord, we thank You so much for all that You have done for us. We thank You for the gospel, because in the gospel we see that there is one sure hope that we can rely upon, and that is the shed blood of Jesus Christ. And if we're believers, we have a home that's set for us in eternity, and we can look forward to that. And in the meantime, we be obedient. But if we're not if someone's not a believer, Father, someone's not a believer out there in Facebook land and all of that out to social media, Lord, I pray that You're using Your word today in some way to prick their heart and say, are you ready, really? Lord, I'd love to share with somebody how they can know without a doubt that they can have Jesus as a Savior in a home in heaven. And I pray that they'll seek Me after service, and I will be glad to share with them that. And maybe they have a question about so many other things, and whatever's on their heart, Father, I pray we can give them peace through that. Maybe there's some here today, Father, I don't know, who are dealing with some things, or some stress, some grievances, some other things, Lord, that's just made life difficult. I pray for them today, Father, Lord, that You will grant them peace, grant them assurance to know that You care, and that Your word's not going to fail, Your promises are not going to fail. Because I really believe, Lord, that things aren't going to get much better, they're going to get worse. And as we face those things, help us to do so faithfully. Lord, we love You, and we thank You, Lord, for all that You've done for us, and all that You will do. Please go with us as we go our separate